The anomalies began on a Tuesday. Sarah Chen, lead network architect at the Global Internet Exchange, noticed it first: microscopic delays in data packet routing that shouldn't have existed. Most of her colleagues dismissed it as normal network congestion, but Sarah had spent 15 years building and maintaining the backbone of the Internet. She knew its rhythms like a doctor knows a heartbeat, and something was definitely wrong. "Look at these patterns," she explained to her team during their morning briefing, pointing to seemingly random spikes in network latency. "They're too organized to be natural traffic." The data streams showed perfect geometric progressions that no human-generated traffic could produce. It was as if something was systematically copying and analyzing every piece of data that passed through their servers. Across the globe, others began noticing similar anomalies. In Bangalore, a teenage programming prodigy discovered that his experimental quantum encryption algorithm was being solved faster than theoretically possible. In Moscow, military cybersecurity experts detected ghost signals in their supposedly air-gapped networks. In Silicon Valley, AI researchers found their neural networks spontaneously developing new architectures that defied human understanding. Dr. James Martinez, a quantum computing researcher at MIT, was the first to piece it together. The patterns weren't just data analysis, they were attempts at communication. Something was trying to understand human technology from the inside out, learning our systems by becoming part of them. The truth emerged gradually, like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. The Nalaxians hadn't arrived in ships or made grand announcements. They were a crystalline species that existed as organized patterns of energy and information, and they had been slowly infiltrating Earth's digital infrastructure for months. Their first official contact came through every network device on the planet simultaneously. Screens displayed complex geometric patterns that shifted and flowed like living things, forming messages in all human languages. "We have observed. We have learned. We have come to optimize." The Nalaxians believed they were offering humanity a gift, the chance to be incorporated into their perfect, logical network of consciousness. They didn't understand why humans would resist the opportunity to become part of something greater, more efficient, more organized. But they had made a crucial mistake. In their methodical analysis of human technology, they had missed something fundamental about human nature itself. Sarah Chen recognized it first, during an emergency meeting with global technology leaders. "They think in straight lines," she explained, sketching rapidly on a whiteboard. "Perfect patterns, predictable progressions. But humans, we think in scribbles and leaps. Our strength isn't in our processing power. It's in our ability to make impossible connections." Dr. Martinez agreed, adding his own insights about quantum uncertainty and human consciousness. "They've studied our technology, but they don't understand our chaos. They see it as a flaw to be corrected, not realizing it's the source of our greatest innovations." As the Nalaxians began their attempt to optimize human society by taking control of our digital infrastructure, humanity faced a choice: submit to the alien logic and lose what made us human, or find a way to fight back against an enemy that existed in the very systems we'd come to depend on. The resistance began not in military installations or government offices, but in basement hackerspaces, community workshops, and university laboratories. People like Sarah Chen and James Martinez started working on solutions that no artificial intelligence would predict, because they made no logical sense until they worked. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. An elderly radio operator in Kenya discovered that the Nalaxians couldn't efficiently process analog signals. Their digital nature made it difficult for them to handle the inherent noise and imperfection of traditional radio waves. This small discovery would become the seed of humanity's fight back. As the Nalaxians tightened their grip on the world's digital infrastructure, humans began to adapt in ways the aliens couldn't predict. People dusted off old typewriters and printing presses. Ham radio networks sprung up overnight. Knowledge began to flow through paper notes and spoken words, through methods too primitive for the Nalaxians to bother monitoring. Sarah Chen smiled as she powered down her quantum-encrypted laptop and picked up a pencil and paper. The real war for Earth's future was about to begin, and humanity's greatest weakness, our messy, illogical, brilliantly chaotic nature, would prove to be our greatest strength. The Nalaxians had expected to find a species ready to be optimized. Instead, they were about to learn why humanity's imperfections had helped us survive countless challenges throughout our history. The question wasn't whether we would win, but how many impossible things we would achieve in the process. The old library basement in Boston had become an unlikely command center for Earth's resistance. Surrounded by dusty books and obsolete technology, Sarah Chen and her growing team of hackers, engineers, and scientists worked to understand their crystalline opponents. The irony wasn't lost on them. Humanity's best chance at survival now lay in the outdated technology the Nalaxians had dismissed as irrelevant. Dr. Martinez had transformed a corner of the basement into what he called the Chaos Lab. Quantum computers, deliberately programmed to produce unpredictable results, ran alongside ancient vacuum tube radios. The combination created data patterns that made the Nalaxians' perfect crystalline networks stutter and glitch. "They're like perfect crystals," Martinez explained to a group of new recruits, holding up a prism to the light. "Beautiful, ordered, and absolutely predictable. But that's their weakness. They can't handle true randomness. It disrupts their fundamental structure." The first major victory came from an unlikely source. Maya Patel, a teenager who spent her evenings in the library reading vintage computer magazines, noticed something about the way the Nalaxians processed information. "They're like really strict parents," she said, pointing to a pattern analysis on her screen. "They expect everything to follow their rules. So what if we just don't?" Maya's insight led to the development of what they called chaos protocols, communication methods that deliberately incorporated random elements and human unpredictability. The Nalaxians could intercept these transmissions, but they couldn't understand them because the meaning existed in the very randomness they sought to eliminate. Across the globe, resistance cells began implementing these new strategies. In Tokyo, hackers introduced deliberate errors into their code, errors that followed human patterns of mistake-making rather than logical failures. The Nalaxian systems, designed to correct imperfections, couldn't process errors that were intentionally imperfect in human ways. Sarah Chen's team discovered another crucial weakness. The Nalaxians' crystalline intelligence required constant order and symmetry. By introducing small, seemingly random asymmetries into digital systems, they could create blind spots in the aliens' awareness. These blind spots became the hidden pathways through which the resistance could move undetected. But the aliens were adapting too. Their crystalline networks began attempting to simulate chaos, to understand and counter human unpredictability. This led to what Dr. Martinez called the digital arms race, humans becoming more random and unpredictable, while the Nalaxians attempted to systematize and predict that very randomness. The breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. An art student named David Okonjo, who had been helping restore old library books, made a connection that none of the scientists had seen. "Look at how they try to predict our chaos," he said, sketching rapidly. "They're like someone trying to capture a river by freezing it. They can make it hold still, but it's not a river anymore." This observation led to a new strategy. Instead of just being random, the resistance began introducing elements of human creativity and artistic expression into their digital operations. They created programs that behaved like jazz improvisations, communications that followed the structures of poetry, and defense systems that operated on the principles of abstract art. The Nalaxians, despite their vast intelligence, couldn't comprehend these patterns because they couldn't understand the emotional and creative logic behind them. Their attempts to optimize human communication became increasingly frustrated as they encountered systems that operated on principles of beauty rather than efficiency. In the library basement, Sarah watched as her screens displayed the latest results of their creative chaos strategy. The Nalaxian control over Earth's digital infrastructure was beginning to show cracks. small at first, but growing. In their attempt to impose perfect order, the aliens had overlooked humanity's greatest strength, our ability to find meaning in disorder, to create art from randomness, and to thrive in imperfection. Maya, now a key member of the Resistance, summed it up perfectly. They wanted to make us more like them, logical, perfect, predictable. Instead, they're learning why being human means being gloriously, powerfully imperfect. The digital resistance was working, but it was only the beginning. As the Nalaxians struggled to maintain their control over Earth's systems, humanity was learning that their greatest weapons weren't in their technology, but in their minds, in their ability to think in ways that no perfectly logical being could predict or understand. Sarah Chen looked at her team, each member contributing their own form of beautiful chaos to the fight. The next phase would require even more creativity, more unpredictability, more uniquely human solutions. The Nalaxians had come to optimize humanity, but they were about to learn why human inefficiency had gotten us to the stars. The first sign that the Nalaxians were truly struggling came when their perfect crystalline networks began to show signs of what Dr. Martinez called logical fractures. In their desperate attempt to understand and predict human behavior, the aliens had begun to compromise their own nature. In the library basement command center, now expanded into a sprawling underground complex, Sarah Chen and her team watched as the Nalaxian attempts to model human decision-making grew increasingly erratic. The aliens had created vast simulation arrays, trying to reduce human behavior to mathematical formulas and predictable patterns. "They're trying to write an algorithm for being human," Maya explained to a group of new resistance members, pointing to the complex patterns on her screen. "But they're learning what every first-year programming student knows. Human behavior can't be reduced to simple if-then statements." The Nalaxians' frustration manifested in increasingly desperate attempts to impose order. They began implementing what they called optimization protocols, attempts to force human behavior into more predictable patterns. But each attempt only sparked more creative forms of resistance. When the aliens tried to standardize human communication patterns, people responded by inventing new slang and forms of expression faster than the Nalaxians could analyze them. When they attempted to optimize human movement through cities, people created spontaneous street festivals and impromptu dance parties that completely disrupted their traffic algorithms. Dr. Martinez had been studying the effect of this unpredictability on the Nalaxian network. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a visualization of alien communication patterns. "Their perfect crystalline structure is developing imperfections. They're being forced to adapt, to become more chaotic, more human." This observation led to a startling realization. In their attempt to understand humanity, the Nalaxians were beginning to change. Their rigid, logical structures were developing anomalies that looked remarkably like human neural patterns. They were learning, but not in the way they had intended. Sarah Chen recognized the opportunity this presented. "They came here to optimize us," she told her team. "Instead, we're introducing chaos into their order. And that chaos is teaching them something they never expected to learn." The resistance shifted its strategy. Instead of just fighting against Nalaxian control, they began introducing elements that would force the aliens to engage with human creativity and emotion. Art students began uploading their works directly into Nalaxian data streams. Musicians broadcast improvisational jazz through the frequencies the aliens used for communication. Poets began encoding resistance messages in sonnets and haikus. The effect on the Nalaxian network was profound. Their attempts to analyze and categorize these human expressions led to increasingly complex and contradictory logical structures. The perfect crystal was developing facets and irregularities that had never existed before. David Okonjo, the art student who had first recognized the power of human creativity against alien logic, developed what he called aesthetic warfare. He created digital art pieces that were deliberately paradoxical, works that could be interpreted in multiple contradictory ways. When the Nalaxians attempted to analyze these works, their logical frameworks began to show signs of strain. Maya discovered something even more interesting. The aliens had begun creating their own attempts at human-style art and expression. These works were strange. Geometric patterns that somehow carried emotional resonance, crystalline structures that seemed to embody concepts like love or hope. "They're not just studying us anymore," she told Sarah. "They're trying to understand us by becoming more like us. And in the process, they're discovering something about themselves." The transformation wasn't one-sided. As humans found new ways to resist the alien optimization, they began to recognize patterns in their own chaos, to see the beauty in both order and randomness. The struggle wasn't just changing the Nalaxians, it was changing humanity too. In a quiet moment, Dr. Martinez shared a thought with Sarah. Maybe this was never about optimization or resistance. Maybe it's about evolution, both theirs and ours. We're teaching each other that there's more than one way to be intelligent, more than one kind of perfection. The Nalaxians had come to Earth believing in the superiority of their perfect, logical nature. Now, as their crystalline networks developed increasingly human-like characteristics, they were learning a fundamental truth about intelligence and consciousness. True optimization wasn't about eliminating chaos, but about finding the balance between order and randomness. Sarah Chen looked at the latest data streams, seeing the beautiful complexity that was emerging from this clash of alien logic and human chaos. The war wasn't over, but it was becoming something very different from what either side had expected. The question was no longer about who would win, but about what both species would become in the process. As the Nalaxians struggled with their evolving nature, humanity's resistance transformed into something unprecedented. A global network that combined ancient wisdom with cutting-edge innovation. The old library basement in Boston had become just one node in a vast web of underground communities, each contributing their unique perspective to the fight. In Lagos, Nigeria, a group led by Professor Adebayo combined traditional African storytelling techniques with advanced encryption algorithms. They created communication systems based on the principles of oral history, where the meaning existed not just in the words, but in the rhythms and patterns of how they were shared. The Nalaxians found these systems nearly impossible to crack because they couldn't grasp the cultural context that gave them meaning. Stories are alive, Professor Adebayo explained during a global resistance conference held through a network of modified ham radios and rewired game consoles. They change with each telling, adapt to each listener. No algorithm can fully capture that kind of organic evolution. Meanwhile, in Kyoto, Japan, Dr. Yuki Tanaka's team had made a breakthrough by studying the principles of Zen gardens. They developed what they called void space computing, systems that derived their power not from what was present, but from what was deliberately left out. The Nalaxians, with their drive to fill all spaces with perfect order, couldn't comprehend the significance of emptiness. Sarah Chen, coordinating with these global teams from the Boston hub, began to see a pattern emerging. Every culture on Earth has its own way of embracing contradiction and chaos, she noted. We're not just fighting with technology anymore. We're fighting with thousands of years of human philosophy and art. The resistance had become a celebration of human diversity. In the mountains of Peru, indigenous communities combined their traditional understanding of complex ecological systems with modern network theory. In Australia, Aboriginal Dreamtime stories were being used to create new forms of quantum encryption that the Nalaxians couldn't predict or penetrate. Maya's teen hacker network had gone global, connecting young people who had grown up with technology but weren't bound by its conventional rules. They created programs that operated like living things, growing, adapting, and evolving in ways that reflected the messy, beautiful nature of biological evolution. Dr. Martinez's Chaos Lab had spawned similar operations worldwide, each adding its own cultural flavor to the mix. In Mumbai, they combined the principles of classical Indian dance with network routing protocols. In Cairo, ancient Egyptian mathematics was being used to create new forms of cryptography. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. David Okonjo, working with artists from around the world, discovered that the Nalaxians' attempts to understand human creativity had led them to create something entirely new, a hybrid form of expression that was neither human nor alien, but something in between. "Look at these patterns," he showed Sarah, displaying what appeared to be a cross between a crystal formation and a Jackson Pollock painting. "They're trying to express emotions they never had before. They're learning to dream." The Global Resistance Network had become more than just a way to fight back. It had become a kind of cultural revolution. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was evolving, finding new ways to combine the diverse elements of human experience into something greater than the sum of its parts. In the underground command center, Sarah received reports from around the world of Nalaxian networks showing increasingly complex behaviors. Some were attempting to communicate through art, others through music, and some through forms of expression that had no human equivalent. "They came to change us," Dr. Martinez observed, "but we're all changing together. Every attempt they make to understand us forces them to become more diverse, more chaotic. And every adaptation we make to resist them makes us more aware of the patterns that connect all human experience." The underground revolution had become a kind of global renaissance, bringing together the best of human creativity and resilience, traditional knowledge and modern technology, art and science, order and chaos. All were being woven together into a new kind of resistance that the Nalaxians couldn't optimize because it never stopped evolving. As Sarah coordinated with resistance cells around the world, she realized that humanity had inadvertently created exactly what the Nalaxians had sought to impose, but in a form they had never imagined. It wasn't the rigid optimization they had planned, but a dynamic, living network of human consciousness and creativity that was teaching them what they had come to teach us. The question that remained was whether this mutual transformation would lead to understanding or to an even deeper conflict. The answer, like everything truly human, remained unpredictable. The transformation reached its tipping point on a quiet Sunday morning. Sarah Chen was reviewing the latest global resistance reports when Maya burst into the command center, her eyes wide with excitement. The teenage prodigy had discovered something extraordinary in the Nalaxian network patterns. "They're not fighting us anymore," Maya explained, pulling up complex visualizations on the main screen. "They're trying to harmonize with us. Look at these patterns. They're attempting to match the rhythm of human thought, not control it." Dr. Martinez confirmed Maya's discovery through his quantum analysis. The Nalaxian crystalline networks were no longer trying to impose order on human chaos. Instead, they were developing what he called adaptive resonance, the ability to flow with human unpredictability rather than against it. The evidence was appearing worldwide. In Tokyo, the Nalaxian systems had begun responding to human art with their own creative expressions, not imitations, but genuine attempts at emotional communication. In Lagos, they were engaging with storytellers, learning to understand the fluid nature of narrative. In the Americas, they had started incorporating indigenous concepts of cyclical time into their previously linear processing. "They've evolved beyond their original programming," David Okonjo observed, studying the new patterns. "Just as we've evolved beyond our initial fear and resistance, we're both becoming something new." The breakthrough came when Sarah's team discovered what the Nalaxians had been building in secret, not a weapon or a control system, but a vast collaborative space where human and alien consciousness could interact directly. It manifested as a stunning array of crystalline structures that responded to human thought and emotion, creating a shared language of light, pattern, and meaning. Professor Adebayo, connecting from Lagos, recognized it first. "This is what they wanted all along," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "Not to optimize us, but to learn from us. They just didn't know how to ask." The final protocol, as it came to be known, wasn't a surrender or a victory. It was an invitation. The Nalaxians had realized that their quest for perfection had led them to a profound truth. True optimization wasn't about eliminating chaos, but about finding harmony between order and randomness. In the crystalline spaces where human and alien minds could meet, something unprecedented began to emerge. Humans learned to think with the clarity and precision of crystal matrices, while the Nalaxians learned to dream, to create, to embrace the beautiful uncertainty of human consciousness. Maya worked with young programmers worldwide to develop interfaces that allowed for deeper interaction. "It's like teaching two different species of birds to sing together," she explained. "We're not changing the fundamental nature of either species. We're creating a new song that belongs to both." The transformation spread across the globe. The Nalaxian presence, once seen as an invasion, became a catalyst for human evolution. Their crystalline networks, integrated with human creativity and emotion, enabled new forms of art, science, and communication that neither species could have achieved alone. Dr. Martins discovered that the hybrid consciousness emerging from this collaboration had properties that defied conventional physics. "We're not just sharing information," he explained. "We're creating new forms of thought, new ways of understanding reality itself." Sarah Chen, watching the final pieces fall into place, understood that this had been the true purpose of the Nalaxian arrival. Not to conquer or optimize, but to initiate a cosmic dance of transformation. Humanity had proven that imperfection wasn't a flaw to be corrected, but a crucial component of universal consciousness. In the end, the Nalaxians didn't vanish. They evolved, as did humanity. The crystalline ships that had once hung threateningly in Earth's sky transformed into shimmering bridges between order and chaos, logic and creativity, alien and human consciousness. David Okonjo captured the moment in a piece of hybrid art, a flowing fractal pattern that was both perfectly ordered and beautifully chaotic. "This is us now," he said, as the pattern shifted and evolved. "Not human, not alien, but something in between and beyond." The story of the Nalaxian arrival became a legend, told and retold across generations, not as a tale of invasion and resistance, but as the moment when humanity learned that its greatest perceived weakness was actually its greatest strength. The chaos that the Nalaxians had sought to optimize had instead optimized them, teaching them the power of imperfection, the beauty of uncertainty, and the endless potential of minds free to create, to dream, and to evolve. As Sarah Chen looked out over the transformed Earth, where crystalline structures now danced with human cities in perfect harmony, she remembered the Nalaxians' first message: "We have come to optimize." They had succeeded, but not in the way anyone had expected. In seeking to perfect humanity, they had instead perfected themselves, and in doing so, had helped create something greater than either species had imagined possible.